I'm calling Roman Badani now. He's an investigative journalist, and he was investigating the private life of Vladimir Putin. He did a story for his website called Project, which means project, about Vladimir Putin's daughters. Officially, there are at least two. There's probably some more, but he in Project came across a story of his relationship with a woman called Svetlana, and the story says, had a daughter, and Svetlana and the daughter lived in extraordinary luxury. So this is proper journalism. The problem is I can't get through. And the reason I can't get through is because the Russian police, and that really means the Russian secret police, are raiding Roman's home right now. And this makes me sick with fear.
At the exact time I'm making that call, Russian Twitter says Moscow police are taking Roman away for interrogation. This is a podcast about Vladimir Putin and what makes him do the things that he does.
There were days when I didn't know how things could possibly progress in any normal way after what happened. It was just all so grim and seemed the pain, the shame, and all of it seemed endless.
You're listening to Natalia Pelovina. Her courage in taking on Putin came at such cost to her dignity, she thought about killing herself. Vladimir Putin's been using these tactics for years. I'm looking at a grainy black and white video of a fat middle-aged man with a Bobby Charlton comb-over in bed with two prostitutes half his age. It's spring '99 and a sad moment of sexual indignity for Mr. Comb-over and his women. But this video marks a key event in modern Russian history. They call this compromat. And this is a classic of that dark art.
What does compromat mean?
Compromat means compromising material.
Donald Rayfield, Emeritus Professor of Russian at London University, in his garden in Kent, where there are far too many noisy birds, frankly.
It was an old Soviet term, and visiting scientists or politicians were always given honey traps. They would be amazed. They'd go into a bar and the prostitute would not want money and even paid for the champagne.
The sex blackmail tape is run on Russian primetime TV, and a very young-looking Vladimir Putin, wearing a cheap leather jacket, comes on the telly to identify Mr. Comb-over as Yuri Skaratov, Russia's prosecutor general. He denies being Mr. Comb-over, but it doesn't matter. It's too late. The damage is done. Putin has risen in the world. By now, in 1999, he's the head of the FSB, the new name for the KGB. Old dog, same tricks. In this clip, ignore the background music. Listen to the intensity of Putin's condemnation.
Мое мнение по этому вопросу известно. Оно соответствует мнению президента и премьер-министра страны. Юрий Ильич должен уйти в отставку.
What Putin is saying here is stark. Skuratov has to resign. The scandal rocks Russia, and compromat kills the career of the prosecutor general, and it kills his investigation into the corruption of outgoing President Boris Yeltsin and his family. The payback is large. Yeltsin makes the FSB boss Vladimir Putin acting prime minister. Effectively, compromat gives Putin the keys to the Kremlin. A second possible victim of Kremlin compromat could be this man.
I think it was disgraceful that the intelligence agencies allowed any information that turned out to be so false and fake out. I think it's a disgrace that information that was false and fake and never happened got released to the public.
President-elect Donald Trump in January 2017 is fuming at the leaking of a confidential report by a former MI6 spy. Christopher Steele reported that Trump hated Obama so much that when he stayed in a Moscow hotel in 2013, he hired, quotes, a number of prostitutes to perform a golden showers or urination show in front of him, end quotes. The story goes on that the prostitutes were there to defile the bed used by the Obamas on an earlier visit. Steele reported the FSB taped the orgy created for Trump's special pleasure. Once again, Trump denies the claim, tweeting that the allegation is the kind of thing that happened in Nazi Germany. It's 2016, and Putin's former Prime Minister, Mikhail Kasyanov, a serious rival to the president, is secretly filmed in bed with a woman who's not his wife.
Касьянов много поет. В основном мелодии из детского советского кино.
The sex tape leads national TV news that night, and it's still plastered all over the internet and on YouTube. Kasyanov's lover is Natalia Pelovina.
Oh, I was completely destroyed, completely and utterly destroyed. My world collapsed around me and there was nothing left and I didn't want to live. And I'm not exaggerating because obviously they didn't just show me as a horrible individual. They also showed me naked. They showed me in just in an unimaginable way, to be honest, for a woman. So yeah, I mean, I got messages after that from people around the world saying that their friend killed themselves after the similar video, etc. So people, even take their own lives after something like that is exposed. In my case, it was all over television as well as all over internet. I didn't want to live for a while.
In Russia, Putin's enemies are not allowed to have a private life. We know all about what they do in the bedroom. But no one knows simple facts about Vladimir Putin. How many kids has he got? With whom? And are they, by any chance, extraordinarily rich?
Natalia, you've been sex-shamed by the Russian secret state, almost certainly on the orders of Vladimir Putin. Can you tell me about Vladimir Putin's love life?
Oh, I'd love to.
You're listening to Taking on Putin, Episode 4, Russia's Greatest Love Machine. Natalia Pelovina is a playwright, born in Russia, but she moves to Britain when she's young, and she studies at university in London. In 2012, she returns home where her plays get banned on their first nights. People think West End critics are bad. She's such an eloquent voice against the regime, the police raid her home twice, seizing her computer and phones. But that isn't the worst thing that's happened to her.
To viewers of YouTube, you are famous, but not in a nice way. Can you explain to the listeners of the podcast why that might be?
Well, in 2016, a film came out on Russian propaganda channel called NTV about myself and former Russian Prime Minister, where they showed us in a very personal way, so to speak. We were and are in fact in a relationship, and we were at the time. And the film showed us in the bedroom of the apartment that we shared at the time, and the camera was planted in the wall. It was actually in the wall of the bedroom of this private apartment. I repeat, it's a privately owned apartment, and it showed it very graphically. We had no idea would come to this. Back in 2012, when I arrived in Russia to fight against the regime, we didn't know Vladimir Putin would become so monstrous that I would end up, being shown on television naked, having sex.
Natalia and Mikhail Misha Kasyanov, Putin's first prime minister back in 2000, are publicly shamed. The compromat kills his political career and her dignity.
Who did this? I'm not interested in the technicians. Who, at the top of Russian politics, gave the order for this to appear on primetime Russian TV?
Well, we think, Mr. Kasyanov and I think that Putin agreed to this because he had to have a say in it, because Mr. Kasyanov is not only former prime minister, but he was Putin's first prime minister. They worked together. So for FSB to go and do this without his okay would have been impossible. So in all likelihood, he didn't come up with the idea, but when this idea was offered, he agreed to it. And then the FSB did the work.
By the way, I felt sorry for you as a couple, and I felt sorry for you as a human being, and I felt the people who did this are disgusting.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, I agree with the sentiment that they are disgusting, and they really don't care for human life, let alone human relationships and human dignity. They have none themselves. There were days when I didn't know how things could possibly progress in any normal way after what happened. It was just also grim, and seemed the pain, the shame, and all of it seemed endless. I didn't want to give them the pleasure of killing me off completely. So I had to fight through this awful, horrible reality of mine and hope that there is some light at the end of it.
The master of the Kremlin denies all of this, but his critics insist he uses shame to destroy the lives of others. But his own private life is hidden behind a wall of secrecy. The contrast, and yes, the brazen hypocrisy would be comic if what happens to his victims was not so dark. Putin shapes his public image to the nth degree. Never mind the fake sun shining from behind North Korea's fat despot, Kim Jong-un, or the Hollywood stars worshipping the leader of the Church of Scientology. Vladimir Putin's cult of personality is the richest, the most well-funded in the whole world. But like all great lies, some of it is true. I'm trying to understand Putin's cult of personality, what you could call the Church of Putinology. I'm with my friend, the journalist, Lisa Kozlenko. So, we're looking now. Explain what we're looking at.
We're looking at Putin, topless, riding the horse, looking to his left. And
his muscles are strong. He looks very masculine, yes?
He not very medium masculine. He's supposed to look sexy on this picture, but I'm not sure whether this picture is natural or it was edited in Photoshop.
Next picture, please.
Putin fishing. We are looking at Putin fishing. We're already with the trophy. One big fish. And again, his belly has got some muscles. He's supposed to look masculine and sexy and maybe as a Russian sex symbol. And he's supposed to attract all the audience.
So, by the way, he's wearing kind of wraparound glasses, which make him look a little bit like the Lone Ranger, having caught a fish. It's a kind of trouty thing. It's not particularly
maybe
big.
Trout, maybe salmon.
There's something slightly pathetic about this image, I think. It's like a little boy proving to the world, look at me. Let's see one more. There's a picture of him in a submersible. Yes, a submersible with a great big dome, and you can see...
It's transparent, and we can see his face. He looks scared, shy, ashamed of something. And we can see him.
He looks brave. He looks manly.
He's supposed to, but to me, he's not.
And there's something... You know, the thing about this, Lisa, is that he looks to me like he's a Bond villain or something. Mm-hmm. And again, there's something comic about it. That he's pretending, look at me, I've got a submersible, I can do this. So again, it feels like
he's proving himself.
He's proving himself, and he's showing, look, I'm doing everything a small boy would dream of doing, fishing, riding horses, and now I'm going on a submersible to the bottom of the ocean. Look at me.
So now I can have all the women whom I could not have during my youth, for example, because I was not worthy enough. And now see with all this money and submersibles and fishes and what else and the horses. Now you see that I deserve you.
But what I find fascinating about it is that there are two levels of this. One is, look at me, I'm an alpha male, I'm dominating the world. But the other thing I see behind the mask is something rather pitiable and pathetic.
Yeah.
That actually he didn't have a fun childhood.
I don't see it behind the mask. This is the first thing I see because his eyes are so scared still. He cannot hide it.
This is a projection of his power, but in a funny way, this image also undermines his power and I feel conveys something of the truth, that this is a man who lives in a perpetual state of fear.
I agree.
Charlie Walker is a sociologist at Southampton University. He knows his Russian man on the streets, and he suggests that my take, let's call him Vlad the Yucksky, might not be to understand how many ordinary Russians see him.
It's intended for a very traditionalist market. These sort of hyper-masculine displays that Putin engages in goes back to the beginning of his period as president. The cult of Putin began with him flying aeroplanes and helicopters during the Chechen War. So as he became president, this was going on, and he was this man of action, as it were, that Russia kind of desperately needed after this long period of being led by Boris Yeltsin. He came across as a buffoon who'd sold out to the West. The country was out of control. He was physically, personally out of control. And then Putin comes along. He comes from nowhere, and his popularity ratings surged very quickly, partly on the back of this kind of man of action cult, which his PR team were promoting. And what we see then, sort of 10 years later, when we see him on horseback and out fishing, is a deliberate attempt to appeal to the man in the street, as it were, and the wife of the man in the street, because this sort of outward bound masculinity that he's projecting is something that most ordinary Russians can relate to, particularly working class men who've been in the army. Men who were brought up during the Soviet period mostly would have served in the army. And so going fishing with friends, cooking a kebab or cooking fish on a campfire next to a lake, all of this is very sort of common within Russian masculine culture. In interviews with him when he's out and about in nature, he says, I feel very close to Russian people. I feel very close to ordinary people. I've never seen myself as part of an elite. And this physical display, the shirtless horse riding, fishing masculinity, is something that people can connect with quite easily.
You use the C word first, cult, and I'm always fascinated by this. Do you think that Putin here, with these pictures, with these images, he's generating a cult of personality?
Yeah, I think that started, I think it was Gleb Pavlovsky was his first PR guy when he emerged as a presidential candidate, and then when he won the presidential election. And Pavlovsky was actively promoting what he himself calls this cult of Putin. And I think that what we see, it's not elites that he's appealing to, it's not intellectuals that he's appealing to, it is ordinary people. And I think that is very much a continuation of that cult of Putin.
The Church of Putinology tells the official story of Vladimir Putin's marriage to Ludmila, an Aeroflot hostess from 1983 to 2013. Ludmila recalls their first meeting. It's not exactly love at first sight.
Volodya was standing on the steps of the ticket office. He was very poorly dressed. He looked very unprepossessing. I would not have paid any attention to him on the street.
Zarina Zabriskie is a Russian novelist now living in the United States.
Now, I haven't been back in 15 years or so, and I have no intention of going back until Putin is out. And in fact, technically, I cannot go because the Russian consulate pronounced me a terrorist and contacted the FBI on my account. So no way I'm going there.
Are you a terrorist?
I am absolutely not a terrorist, but I am a writer, and writers are dangerous. So in that sense, we all are probably not terrorists, but the terror to the regime that is there.
Having cleared that up, Serena gives me the inside track on Ludmila Putin.
There's one book that includes memoirs by Ludmila and her was her maiden name, Shkrebnyova. But it's a very sad memoir.
Ludmila allegedly controls a famous Moscow mansion, once owned by the Tolstoy family. This rakes in millions of dollars a year in rent. She's said to have businesses and properties across Russia and in France too.
And Vladimir Putin also owns a place in Kaliningrad that she rents out. And the list goes on and on and on. And we are not even going into his children, into his daughters.
Let's talk about his daughters. Are they rich too?
Well, first of all, we can only say alleged daughters because he doesn't recognize them and they live with different names. And it's been only very recently, I think it was this year, that they appeared at St. Petersburg Economic Forum under their different names, but being treated as celebrities of the first rank. But they were treated basically as tsaritsas by all the people.
So for listeners, that means 4 Russian queens, the tsaritsa, yeah?
Yeah.
So the anomaly here, and in investigative journalism, anomalies are always the thing you go for, is that here are 2 young women. They have no history, no commercial history, no evidence that they know what they're doing or they've made lots of money, who are treated like royalty. And the gossip is they're Putin's daughters.
Pretty much, but everybody knows that, but nobody officially talks about it. But they cannot ask them, are you in fact Putin's daughter? That's just not being done.
Natalia Pelovina, the victim of Kremlin compromat, has some sympathy for Ludmila. Putin divorced Ludmila after 30 years of marriage.
She never looked very happy, very sort of content woman at all. But I guess we now know why. The information that he's had multiple lovers has come out, but there have been new revelations recently with regards to his supposedly his first mistress during his presidency, Svetlana Krivanogich.
I asked Natalia what Svetlana's surname means in English.
Svetlana Krivanogich in English means crooked legs.
I'm very bad at pronouncing Russian names, so I'm just going to call her Lady Crooked Legs. When you're enjoying this too much, Natalia. Shame on you.
Well, I'm allowed to.
You will recall this episode started with my trying to get hold of Roman Badanin, the investigative journalist who was trying to look into Vladimir Putin's private life. The Moscow cops release him, and I finally get to talk to him some weeks before the war starts.
Hello? Hello? Hi, hello, Roman. It's great to finally talk to you.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me and the listeners why you couldn't talk to me when we were due to have our conversation? Why was that?
It was a police search at the same day at my apartment. They interrogated me and 2 of my colleagues from Project Media, the media organization.
It can't have helped, can it? But you also have written a very long and very detailed article about this woman called Svetlana, who your article said had a love affair with Vladimir Putin. In Britain, to write about, say, for example, that Boris Johnson might be having an affair with somebody, in particular, Jennifer Arcuri, you're not going to get your house raided by police. Is Russia different?
To write story on personal life of Mr. Putin and about his personal wealth, it's really dangerous in Russia. But in many cases, it doesn't mean that just after the article, for example, police comes for you. It can work in a different manner. We don't know how, but trust me, it's a dangerous topic, of course.
Roman stumbled on his scoop about Lady Crooked Legs' affair with Putin when he was working on another, far less interesting story. Then he met a Kremlin insider who talked too much.
And at one particular moment he said, "Hey guys, Miss Tsilevich is not the most important part of this story. As far as I know, she had a close friend of her, young lady as well, and that young lady had an affair with Mr. Putin and they had a baby." And just after saying these words, he stopped. He realized that he said something dangerous. And he stopped talking.
For Roman and his team at Project, the hunt for Lady Crooked Legs, Putin's secret mistress, and their love child was on.
The first, again, aha moment for that was, it was not easy, but we managed to organize the conversation with two really top-rank Putin's allies from early 2000s, of course anonymously, and it was like a sensation. I remember in detail the first meeting. We talked a lot about non-dangerous things like about Bank Russia, something like that.
The team heard a story that Svetlana owned 5% of Bank Russia, styled by US intelligence as Putin's piggy bank, a stake worth scores of millions of dollars.
We talked a lot, and at one particular moment I said, "Do you know about such a stakeholder in Russia? She has like 5 or 7%, Miss Krivanogih." And he said, "Of course I know, but I never tell you."
Bang, bang.
And finally, it was like a final brick in this wall. We found a document based on the birth certificate for Miss Krivanogich's daughter. She had a baby girl in early 2000. The name of her daughter is Liza, Елизавета Krivanogich. And we established that, yeah, she gave birth to baby girl Елизавета Krivanogich. The name of the father of Елизавета was Vladimir. And it was the only thing which was mentioned in her birth certificate. No full name of her father, just a blank. And we started to search Liza Krivanogich in social media. It was not easy because he bears the different name in social media. Her name in social media is Luisa Rozova. And after long search, we finally managed to find her. And we found her pictures, her images, her photos. And it was like a bomb. Have you seen her photos, right? It's like a little Mr. Putin.
I've read the article in its entirety, and I'm going to clap you. I think it's a brilliant piece of investigative journalism in one of the world's most difficult places to do investigative journalism. It's a bloody good piece. And basically, Svetlana's wealth and her daughter's wealth is entirely unexplained, and the evidence is compelling that the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin, has had an affair with this woman, Svetlana, that she was his mistress, they had a child, and the child has got unimaginable wealth, and there's no reason for it. It's completely unexplained, other than that this is evidence of Vladimir Putin's corruption.
Yes, of course. The immediate topic of the article, not his personal life. Well, for me, it doesn't matter who is his mistress. I believe that Russian voters should know about his personal life, but it was not the main topic for us. We focused first of all, on his, well, unlawful wealth, which was obtained by dubious ways. You know what I mean? At one particular moment in 90s, she was like a cleaning lady. And then she became one of the richest women in St. Petersburg.
Right. So the thing is, and I did a BBC documentary a while back about the Church of Scientology. And one of the people who's very critical of the Church of Scientology says they have this thing called a noisy investigation. They want you to be afraid. They want you to know that they are onto you. Is this the same with the Russian secret state?
Of course. It's a basic rule for them. To make you being afraid.
Why aren't you afraid? Because this story, you say yourself, is dangerous. Why do you carry on doing what you're doing?
Well, I really and strongly believe that the journalism, the investigative journalism, the work we do can really make difference for Russian society, for everybody who live here. So I believe in journalism. And unfortunately for my family, I like it as well.
So what is strange is that you can look at people who might have caused trouble for Vladimir Putin, starting with the Prosecutor General, Yuri Skaratov, and then Mikhail Kasyanov. We've seen them in bed with Skaratov. There was video compromat of him in bed with two prostitutes, Mikhail Kasyanov in bed with his lover. So we know about the sex lives of his enemies, but nothing about his own sex life.
Yeah. That's the point.
There is a second mistress.
Vladimir Putin's most famous alleged mistress is Alina Kabaeva. She is a successful gymnast. I think she's an Olympic champion. And they've been linked for many, many years now. And supposedly they have quite a few children. We kind of lost track of how many at this point, because we knew about a son that was born around 2007, 2008, because at that time pictures appeared on the internet. Somebody snapped a picture of Alina Kabaeva, the mistress, pregnant. Then the pictures were deleted once again, and she disappeared out of spotlight. She just disappeared. She was nowhere to be seen.
So Vladimir Putin has a son, allegedly, but there's more.
Then supposedly again, she had another child a couple of years later, another son. And then very recently she had twins. The article came out that she had twins in Moscow in one of the hospitals. And the whole hospital was pretty much emptied out of all the patients when she was there, for obvious reasons, so that she won't be seen by mortals.
So the best count then is 2 daughters by Ludmila, 1 daughter by Lady Crooked Legs, and now 4 kids by Alina the gymnast. 7 in all.
Probably more.
So nobody knows for sure. For the record, Alina Kabaeva has neither confirmed nor denied the rumors about having a relationship with Vladimir Putin. All these methods of silencing, the success of it all speaks to the control Putin has over the media and over the people in his country. Almost no one dares ask these questions, and those few who do have to walk through a wall of fear. Putin has never admitted to having any affairs or having any children outside wedlock. Vladimir Putin denies corruption. Vladimir Putin and the Russian state deny any wrongdoing. Last word to Natalia Pelovina, who was sex-shamed by the Kremlin but has found the courage to pull through. She knows the bleak truth that most people in Russia are keeping their heads down for fear of upsetting the current Tsar.
I think at this point, people are afraid to say anything about Putin. Even on the internet, they think somebody will come after them.
That fear is a well-informed one. True?
Well, absolutely. They read about opposition figures being jailed, being poisoned, being killed, and they don't want to share that fate. They do realize that the government cracks down on anyone who speaks out against them or speaks the truth about them. And they want to stay alive and they want to not go to prison. And that's understandable.
The problem is that for far too many Russians living in that country or in exile abroad, staying on the right side of Vladimir Putin is coming in at too high a price. But woe betide you if you start asking the wrong kind of questions, beginning with how did he make himself look the strong man at the very start of his rule. We shall find out more about how Vladimir Putin deals with his critics in our next episode. Let's not count the dead.
Can you list the number of people you believe have been assassinated by Vladimir Putin?
Yes, I wouldn't be surprised if it's hundreds.
That's next time. You've been listening to Taking on Putin, Episode 4, Russia's Greatest Love Machine.
Taking on Putin is a podcast series written and reported by me, John Sweeney, for Black Dog Wolf Productions. A ton of people have helped make this podcast possible. Some of them at the moment would prefer to be anonymous. You may understand why. I've launched a crowdfunder to help fund this. There are lots of costs, lawyers, checking things out, making sure that it gets to all the right platforms, making sure that the people that I'm working with and I am safe from legal and other threats. I'm not going to spell them out, but use your imagination. So if you can help me tell this story, please help me crowdfund it. In your search engine, dial in crowdfunder Taking on Putin with me, John Sweeney. Thank you for listening, and thank you for coming along for the ride. Take care, and love from Kyiv.